Right, so if I was the frothy-mouthed, migrant-bashing Nigel Farage pointing at small boats from a clifftop type, possibly with a complexion comparable to a clove-studded joint of meat adorning the Christmas table, the prospect of even more migrants attempting to reach our shores would have me screaming into my morning copy of the Daily Mail. So often, the people trying to reach our shores are people we ourselves have had a hand in displacing. There's no more obvious example of that right now than our activities in Israel, given the genocide they're conducting in Gaza that our UK government appears to very much be aiding and abetting in. We are creating a whole new swathe of potential small boat migrants. If you don't believe me, listen to the words of this settler, because it is literally Israel's intent. Right, so what's this all about then, Damo? Well, as regular viewers will know, yesterday I put out a video covering Israeli ministers attending a pro-settler event, which was basically a vehicle to discuss the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. This was organised by the pro-settler organisation Nahala, and one of their key spokespeople is settler activist Daniela Weiss, who happened to take to camera, such is their brazenness, and tell the whole world effectively exactly what their intentions are. Listen to this short clip.
There will be no Arabs in the Gaza Strip. They will go to Turkey, to Scotland, to Britain. I don't want to kill them. I want them out of Gaza, and we'll use different methods. One of them is not to give them any humanitarian aid, so the countries of the world will have pity on them and take them.
I don't want to kill them, I just want them out of Gaza, and one of the ways to do that is to not give them humanitarian aid, she said. Genocide grandma there. You withhold aid, people will die. You can not wish them dead all you like, but death is what such actions would lead to. And the thing is, though, she's right. If Israel do take over Gaza and there's little sign on the international stage that anyone is prepared to stop them, preferring to aid and abet them instead, where will all the people end up? The people of Gaza are being forced out via the southern gate at Rafah into the Sinai desert of Egypt, but they won't stay there. This move has been somewhat obvious for weeks, ever since the ceasefire, because Israeli troops prevented anyone from the north of Gaza returning north during that time, shooting people who tried, sent them all south to start with, where they told them it would be safe for them, and have instead began targeting them there too. Safety being a relative term, only coming once through the Rafah border crossing, and even then, they've got nothing. Egypt's problem then? Well, let's consider that for a moment. Say that Israel succeeds in seizing Gaza and casting out every Palestinian there, 2.2 million people. Do you really think Egypt will assimilate them all, take them all on? That'd be silly. Who would want to do that? That's a vast amount of people. No one nation would take them on. Besides, would all Palestinians want to even stay there? Better prospects in the West, aren't there? Those same Western nations helping Israel destabilise the region now could end up with these same people turning up on their doorsteps. Daniela Weiss named Scotland and Britain specifically. Right now we don't have to take any Palestinian refugees because UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, looks after them and we fund them. Or did, until Israel decided to make accusations against 12 of their 15,000 workers in Gaza, accusing them of helping Hamas on the night of October 7th. The word of these consummate liars, I have no issue saying that given how many of their previous accusations have been debunked, their word is good enough for our stupid leaders here in the UK, Sunak and Starmer both. As a result, Sunak has stopped all humanitarian aid and funding that this country provides to UNRWA, and Starmer has, as usual, supported him in that. They aren't the only countries to have done that, of course. Plenty of other idiotic leaders of other countries have done likewise. The US, Canada, Australia, Italy and more. But collectively, all that contributes to is the potential collapse of the aid agency itself, and certainly hinders them in the immediate term, their ability to provide aid to those in dire need of it, as the population of Gaza teeters on starvation. This is, of course, one of the weapons Daniela Weiss proposed, though, the denial of humanitarian aid. She's also softened up countries that previously didn't have to or weren't required to accept Palestinian refugees into accepting them. Where exactly is the win in supporting Israel here? They must view some Western leaders as a bunch of useful idiots, and they wouldn't be wrong. They help collapse the aid and leave themselves in a position to have to take these people off their hands as a result. 2 for the price of 1. We've seen this picture before. Afghanistan, Syria. You destabilise a region, you create refugees, they turn up to seek asylum elsewhere, a better life to start over somewhere safe, and Britain is very much seen as that. Rishi Sunak is failing to stop the boats as things stand now. The boat crossings across the Channel, they've begun again this month after weeks of poor weather stopping any crossings. That didn't stop James stupidly from bragging about no boat crossings during that period, of course, but there was a very good weather-related reason for that, as was eventually pointed out to him. The people traffickers will be sniffing a red letter day in the near future with the thought of all those desperate people from Gaza potentially trying to come here. 2.2 million of them, potentially. But how many of them will actually make a beeline for Britain? Well, you can't rule out at least some of them. How many, though? Anyone's guess, isn't it? It's not just the boat crossings we've been left incapable of dealing with. No legal safe route for asylum claims to be made here, of course. Having been genocided out of their own land, no possible way of returning them. Every single asylum application would have to be accepted. They would literally have no land to be able to return them to. Israel would never allow them back, potentially threatening to execute them for all we know, should we send them back. Once gone, they will do or say whatever it takes to block their return. So all of these asylum applications, well, they'd have to be accepted, wouldn't they? Having left the EU and preferring to take the piss over their crackpot Rwanda scheme rather than set up a new returns policy with the EU, the Tories have left us wide open to having to house every single person who comes here and successfully seeks asylum. If we still had a returns policy with the EU, we would only take a share of them, a fair share of them, the burden being shared around the rest of Europe, and we wouldn't even need to rejoin the EU to negotiate this. It can still be done. So it is a sick joke. It hasn't been. But such is the lunacy of this Tory government, who would rather not do that because they prefer to be able to attack Europe instead. As for Rwanda, well, it isn't a safe country, and changing the law here to get around that doesn't change that fact. On the international stage, the Rwanda bill currently going through the legislative process, Labour in the Lords shamefully sitting on their hands last night, once again, as the Greens tried to pass a fatal motion killing it off and failing, thanks to Labour Lords and Starmer whipping them to say, well, it's not our job to stop such legislation, when it literally is, and you're paid more than £300 a day in the Lords to actually do that. If you aren't going to do that, get out and make way for somebody who will. But if it passes, it will be taken to court. It will be ruled illegal at that point, I would imagine, under human rights legislation, thus triggering a desire to leave the Human Rights Convention, I expect. To be honest, I think that is the Tory party's end game anyway. But let's entertain the prospect for a moment that they can deport asylum seekers to Rwanda, that they get to that point where they can get those planes going and Suella Braverman's dream comes true. Rwanda have already said there are some people they won't accept, which includes anyone with criminal convictions. Think about that for a moment. Israel lock up Palestinians all the time on trumped-up charges, if any charges. So I honestly wonder how many Palestinians wouldn't have some sort of a criminal record thanks to Israel. They also won't accept families, that might be a new one on you, or anyone under the age of majority, which in Rwanda, like here, is 18. Well, half the population of Gaza are under 18. We wouldn't be able to send, therefore, most Palestinians that might come here to Rwanda, even if the Rwanda deal ends up standing and becoming law. So as things stand, the majority of any Palestinian refugees that apply to come here to seek asylum, as would be their right, if UNRWA collapses as we in part defund them, would have to be homed here. 2.2 million people potentially. And both idiot leaders are helping things along so that this vision becomes more and more of a reality. And the aspiration of genocide grandma Daniela Weiss and the rest of the Israeli settler movement becomes more of a reality, rather than the insane ramblings of hard-right fringe groups as they should be treated as. The Israeli government, many elements of them, are encouraging and enabling these attitudes. Many, as I said at the start, were in attendance at that ethnic cleansing conference, more details of which you can find here on this video if so inclined to watch it. Definitely my recommendation for you next. More evidence that Israel are heading in this direction despite ongoing denials from Benjamin Netanyahu himself. He's not exactly in the driving seat though. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.